Yep, the Habsburgs and Bourbons were at it again, but this time it was over Austria. Well, kinda. So we're going back to 1740 and the death of Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI. But more important than being Holy Roman Emperor, he was ruler of the Habsburg monarchy, which included a good chunk of Europe. But we can just call it Austria because a lot of people back then did. Back in 1703, Charles and his older brother and predecessor as Holy Roman Emperor, Joseph I, had agreed to the Mutual Pact of Succession, which established that if the Habsburgs became extinct on the male line, then their possessions would go to the first female heirs of the elder brother, being Joseph, then those of Charles. However, Salic law, which was the basic for Frankish laws since around 500, stated that females were excluded from inheritance, so in 1713, after Joseph died in 1711 and Charles had taken over, he issued the Pragmatic Sanction, which allowed for female inheritance, but it put any of his own potential heirs above his brother's two daughters, Maria Josephina and Maria Amalia. This really became an issue in 1717 when Charles had a daughter, Maria Theresa, who was the first in line once her father died. Charles tried to get around this in 1719 when his nieces married the rulers of Saxony and Bavaria because he only allowed the marriages if they renounced their claims to the throne. Yeah, this did not work. By the time of Charles's death, Austria, which is more or less what the Habsburg monarchy was known as, had been weakened during the War of Polish Succession and the Russo-Turkish War, while at the same time, the power of Prussia, Bavaria, and Saxony had increased. Much of Europe saw his death as a way to increase their own territory and/or power, and so we had the War of Austrian Succession, fought from 1740 to 1748. And yes, like most wars, the War of Austrian Succession was comprised of smaller wars. Who was fighting? Well, on one side we had France, Prussia, Spain, Bavaria, Saxony, Savoy, Sardinia, Genoa, Sweden, the Duchy of Modena, and the Mughal Empire of India. And in the other corner were the Habsburg monarchy, Great Britain, the province of Hanover, the Dutch Republic, Saxony, and Savoy, Sardinia switched sides, and Russia. The fighting took place over much of Europe, especially northern Italy, the Netherlands, and Central Europe, as well as North America, where both King George's War, mostly between the British and French, and the War of Jenkin's Ear between the British and Spanish were fought as part of the larger conflict, and France and Spain also fought on the high seas across most of the world, as well as over control of India in the First Carnatic War. There were small gains here and there, but by 1748, everybody was just getting tired of fighting. You know, it was expensive, a lot of people were dying, it's understandable. Especially France, who at this point had been under a British blockade for quite some time and were running out of supplies, though they had been able to take most of the Austrian Netherlands by that point. Prussia had also made some impressive gains, primarily in Silesia, a territory in Poland. Starting in 1746, the French and British began to negotiate a peace, and in 1748, the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was agreed to by the two, after which they told the other countries to either agree with it or they could just keep fighting on their own. Most of the other countries weren't particularly happy with the agreement, but they went along with it because they were tired of fighting and this was a way to just end the war. Maria Theresa was still Empress of the Habsburg monarchy, but she felt betrayed by the British and afterward allied with the French, especially considered Austria gave up quite a bit of territory in the agreement. This peace, while ending the war, also led to what was known as the Diplomatic Revolution, where much of Europe shifted alliances. We mentioned Austria moving to the French side, but also they joined up with Russia. Britain, on the other hand, ended up allied with Prussia, and though the fighting was stopped, again, no one was particularly happy with the terms, and all it did was set up the largest conflict that we're going to talk about in this series, the 7 Years' War. Yep, that's the next part.